I'm going to pull up your Twitter. One evening, Bryce and I are on the phone. We're talking about different relative events. He starts talking about his Twitter. And I have never really been big on the Twitter platform. So I got one person I follow. We get off the phone. I decide to pull his page up. And I discover that he has an alternate personality.
It's not alternate. That's not, damn it.
You kidding me? We didn't even get to it. Are you kidding me?
You can't call me alternate. It's
Yes,
not alternate.
you are a different human being.
No,
Yeah, okay.
Calling it out.
Okay. Just one day ago, I spy the importance. I mean, who talks like that? I spy the importance.
It's what people need to know.
Okay.
I'm trying to change people's lives. Flew all the way out here for
You
this.
flew all the way out here for this. XRP, I still believe in you. Let's just cut to the chase.
Yeah.
I don't need to be wined and dined. I already know you're the one.
Come on.
Why would you ever write that?
It makes myself laugh.
Best hashtag XRP riddle so far. And he has to tag him, so he hopes he sees it. Real Donald Trump finally acknowledges XRP and Ripple, and the price goes down. Riddle me this, Batman.
I'm still searching for the answer to that one.
I love this one, but I don't understand why this one's. I just wrapped 365 straight days of no alcohol, no hangovers. Yeah. You just mix that in there. I like that.
Yeah,
that's good.
Helping people out.
Just leading by example.
That's
Still
right.
trying to find the best one here. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is my brother. Based on the resemblance, but also the candor. And we've been wanting to do this together for a really long time, but this boy still lives in Kansas. And we've even talked over the years of doing a podcast together and trying to figure out doing something like that. But first step was even just doing an episode like this together. Because all jokes aside, I love this boy very much. I'm really proud of the man that I'm watching him, have been watching him grow into who you are. As a leader of your family, of your business, and your community. I'm just thankful for you. I'm proud of you and I'm thankful for you. So there's a lot of things that, here we go. It smells like a, so he's alluding to something that was being said on here and I don't want to talk about all of it, but he says it smells like a fish market. Something stinks.
Yeah. Bad fish.
So the majority of this is about XRP. And let's talk about that a little bit. Because today was a crypto summit. Listened to it in my truck on the way over here. What got you into XRP? What's got you so fascinated with it? Give me your spiel. Give the people your spiel. Maybe this will raise the price up and you'll make some money off this. This is called manipulation.
Yeah. Honestly, what got me into it was Dogecoin. So that's what got me into crypto was, what would that be, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I remember that. You're hard on Doge.
The first time that Dogecoin made a run. And then now with Doge coming back as a government agency, whatever, there were the rumors of it happening back in August, September, got me back in it. And
that's what I thought I was out there.
Yeah.
Back in.
It's funny. I don't know if I told you this man had bought me a Dogecoin shirt. It's got Trump and Musk on it and the Doge in the middle. And but yeah, that's what got me into the game.
Why do you think you haven't seen a huge spike in Doge then?
Because the actually getting named as a government agency did spike it. It went from like 16 cents to, I think the high it was 45. So almost.
How long did it stay there?
Probably about a month.
Oh, it did.
Stayed there. And then everything that I thought at that point was when I was in there that I thought Dogecoin was going to do sooner hasn't happened. I thought, but I'm credit here. Okay. I'm not alone in this impatientness here, but X had announced that they were going to do a X payments or X money. I always confuse the two because they've inverted. Whatever it was going to be is now. Anyways, that they're going to integrate Dogecoin. It still could. He hasn't even announced it. Only thing that's come out about that so far is that they partnered with either Visa or MasterCard or something. But there was going to be something along those lines that's still coming. I still think what happened is at some point Elon will tie Dogecoin in as a joke to something with the government. At some point. I think that'll come. But what got me into crypto, though, was the fun of it. They call them meme coins. So
what about XRP tickled your twine to pull you from the Doge to?
So I just started looking into other ones, and actually, weirdly, I'm just gonna blank on the guy's name. It's a guy that always popped up on my Facebook and popped up on weird things. It's just some guy. It's actually a strong Christian guy. I'm trying to remember what his name is. I still see some of his stuff. That he started talking about XRP and was talking about his
the basis as to why you've put so much money in this.
No,
and you've gotten me to put money in this.
No, this you just said how did I find out about it?
All right.
So then he starts talking about it. He said some pretty wild things. So I at least started research. Yeah.
Start tweeting out some good stuff.
Yeah. I didn't do anything. I didn't buy after seeing his stuff. I didn't. I wish I would have, because this is when it was at like 30 cents.
Okay.
Got in at double that initially, but that's what got me to start researching it. And so then the more I researched it, that it makes sense of what it is, the technology behind it, and it also makes sense why the price had remained so low up until, it's still, I would say, considered low, but it was below $1 still for that long. And it made sense why, with the lawsuits and all that stuff with it, that was keeping it down, that in hopes that an administration would come in and repeal all that stuff, which that was the one takeaway from that summit today that didn't cause a run that everyone was hoping. But a lot of people also wondered if that was going to be what happened. But they repealed everything. So now the whole technology of XRP is the banking system. So it's not like a Dogecoin where it's a hype thing where all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh my God, it's a meme where it's going to run.
It's all based off trend.
It's not, it's based off actual utility and usage. So the more it's being adopted by banking systems and so forth, the higher the value actually has to be based off what the actual utility of it is. To make it more efficient, it needs to be more expensive. And then in order for banks to use it, like the government stockpile that's happening right now and the reserve that's happening, that's exciting, but that's not what XRP is built around. So it sucks right now not having a spike because the government's saying all the.
You did call me last Sunday, and you said
I thought it was going to be a big week.
Got really good news.
I do. I mean,
starting right now.
Hey, it ran up 35% in an hour.
Yeah. And then it went.
Well, that's because Trump keeps launching these tariffs, and I still strongly think the crypto market has a degree of manipulation to it. Just
Absolutely,
because
you watching it.
So therefore, every time there's somewhat of a bad news thing that can trigger anything in the actual markets, I feel like the crypto market is magnified because people can actually run and cause trends to bring prices down.
It's more volatile.
Yeah, so they can buy back in for larger amounts. So anyway, so it's one of those things that this week I was still hopeful. I still am always hopeful that I'm going to pull out my phone and it's going to be some huge announcement. And you would think that this week that but that also furthers my point, the actual utility of it. It's not going to be ran off of just hype or excitement. It's actually going to have its price point go up because of it actually being adopted and used by the banking system. So the ability to transfer money anytime, any day, cross-border for basically nothing. So
can you explain this to me? So they talk about being able to transfer large sums of money, like you just said, very quickly. So let's say someone needed to transfer $100 million.
Yeah.
How much XRP gets used? Because you say it gets used up, right?
Yeah, well,
so how does that work?
So right now it's like 0.00001 XRP to move it.
Okay.
So, so think about just normal financial system right now.
Well, what is it? Why
if I want to send you $100 million, I have to wait till the bank's open, and then I have to pay a wire fee.
Right.
And if it's an international wire, I have to pay a fee for that, and it takes time. So if I submit a wire to you, then the wire desk has to process it, then it takes time, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas XRP, and there's other cryptos that are doing it too, but XRP to me is the best one. It is 24/7. It's instant, and it's cheap. And so,
what makes it? How does it use it up? What does it mean it burns it up? Like, how so?
So that's the part I'm not smart enough to fully understand. Just like when so they compare it to, it's a commodity, so they basic like as gas, right? You've heard me say.
Yeah, but we understand how that burns.
I don't understand how you burn certain fumes and shit. I just know it makes the car move. I can't tell you how it makes the engine operate. So
let's
I just know I put it in the car and it goes.
You put gas in a tank, it burns the gasoline, which propels propels the engine and makes the car move.
But I can't tell you
Why
how.
does the XRP burn up to move the money?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know it doesn't, man. I don't know how my gas makes my car move. I put it in the tank, and I trust that it's going to make it move.
All right, let's move on.
So
I actually was going to talk about this anyways. Your tweet, in all seriousness, what do they still call it, a tweet? Or what do you call it on X now?
I think it's just a
Your
post.
excerpt?
A post.
Okay,
Yeah.
so your post about a year of no drinking. What caused you to do that, and what was that like?
My name is Jacob McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of New to Medical Device Sales. Medical device sales is the selling of medical equipment to hospitals, surgeons. They're actually in the surgeries, and the average rep's going to make around $177,000. And what we've been able to do is help people break in about 8 weeks at around $100,000 starting out in the industry. It usually is 5 to 7 interviews, 6 to 12 weeks long in the interview process, and they go up against thousands of people. But that's because you are going to be working with some of the smartest human beings, such as surgeons. You're going to make over 6 figures. You get your car paid for, all your gas paid for, and all your travel paid for. We've been able to help over 2,000 people do this in the last 2 years. Not only do we help people break in to make a difference and change other people's lives, they also get to change their lives. If you're interested in helping people and you're interested in financially becoming free, we can definitely help you. And I think you should check out New to Medical Device Sales, our podcast, while you can also click the link where you guys can learn more about what we do at New to Medical Device Sales. I absolutely love Brenton. I thank him so much for what he's doing for all of you. And I hope you guys keep enjoying the episode.
What caused me to do that was it kind of led up for a little bit. I host a men's group at my gym that every Thursday morning, and in that men's group we had talked about a lot of just who God created us to be, right? So he loves us, so how do we not love ourselves, right? And trusting that who God created us to be is enough. And so we had applied that in a lot of different ways, so who we are at work, who we are at home, just in general, learning to love ourselves, because we are God's creation, right? So we talked about a lot of different variations of that topic in our men's group. And for a while, I'd been toying with the idea of maybe stopping drinking, because when I was honest with myself, on weekends, I didn't believe that. I mean, at work or any social setting, I can talk shit to anybody and make fun of them in a nice way and have fun, right? But on a weekend night, if we're like, hey, we're going to go to a birthday party of somebody's, I was like, I now needed alcohol. I was all of a sudden wasn't enough.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't enough in that scenario. So I'd been actually talking about it a little bit, but I hadn't fully admitted that to myself or even the group of guys. And then New Year's Eve, I'd already made the decision I was going to maybe tail it back a little bit. And then on New Year's Eve last year, was just drinking wine, watching the Chiefs game.
I remember.
Yeah. And the wine just kept going down. And it was supposed to be a laid back night where we were only having a couple
It was
drinks
for
over.
everybody else, but you.
It was actually me too. I went to bed at 9:00.
You passed out.
No, I didn't. I
FaceTimed me
did.
about 8:40. I looked there.
I actually put Jet to bed, and then I put myself to bed with a house full of people. and then that was it. The next morning I wake up, actually wasn't hungover at all. That was the other part of it too. Even though I never drink often, being hungover at 7 a.m, pushing a truck around with your 2-year-old, 1.5-year-old son, and thankfully I would get out of bed and do it, but I would be sitting there hating life.
Good for you, at least you did.
Yeah, I would be hating life while doing it, while also thinking how amazing this was, and I was taken away from that in a way. But anyway, so the New Year's Day, wake up, not actually hungover at all, but then realized I had put myself to bed at 9, had a house full of people, and that Jet was actually up till midnight. And that was the first time, and some people won't think this is a big deal, but 12 years at midnight, like Amanda and I hadn't burnt together, and that's a big deal to her.
Yeah,
and so, which therefore a big deal to me. And then the next day I missed out on that, and I just immediately was like, this is exactly what I've been putting off that I need to do. Is I need to find a way to have a house full of people, or be on a holiday night that's constant. It's a big drinking night, so it's the social thing to do, and go against what everyone else would pressure me to do or felt pressure to do. A lot of it now knowing was my own pressure. That was now fast forward over the past year, how many scenarios I would be in that I'd be like, no one else in here is drinking. But I remember these exact scenarios. I thought for sure everyone was.
But I drank in the shower for this.
Yeah. I had 4 drinks before I left home just to have a edge off before I got there. But yeah, no. So that's what made me do it. Was I was like, ultimately, I didn't feel like I could be me without the help of alcohol at night or in a social situation, and that's ultimately. So I went to the men's group and said, hey, guys, I've been talking to you guys. We've been talking about, but what I prepare is less because I lead it. So is trusting that God did create me enough, but on the weekends I'm not. And so I've actually apologized to them that I had not been doing what I had talked about, and then said, hey, I'm going to go at least a year without drinking, and I'm going to learn to fully embrace what we've been talking about. And I had a great year with it. I mean, I went to certain drinking events where it was wine tastings, and
I remember that.
Didn't feel the need to drink. And I actually did drink for the first time this past February, so a month and a half ago. Had a couple drinks. It was for Amanda's, my wife, for those listening, 30th birthday. And the reason why I decided to have a couple drinks was I felt now at this point the reason why I wasn't drinking was because I was now obsessed with the streak of it versus just not drinking, right? So I ended up having a couple drinks that night and then just stopped. And I haven't had a drink since then. Like, I mean, I had a good time that night, but I didn't do what I normally did. Didn't drink before we went out. And then we had a party bus and people were passing around shots and I didn't take the shots. And it's different now. I now have learned to fully be me in any scenario and be embrace kind of who God created me to be. And so I don't know with going forward what the whole plan of the whole drinking thing can be. I might do it at a country concert here or there just to have a beer or two or something, but the actual need and desire, but the biggest thing, the need to do it is now gone completely, which has been awesome. And haven't been hungover still for almost a year and a half now, so that's been cool. And the other thing too is I had let my family down, and that's not who I wanted to be as a husband and who I wanted to be as a dad. So
it's a powerful motivator. I am 3 years now, and I was a little bit different. I didn't need it in social settings to be able to cut that or be myself. It was for myself. It was in a skin. You knew the levels that I drank at, and most of the time it wouldn't be so that I could be myself. It was I'd always end up being something I wasn't because I would take it so far. For a long time that didn't really bother me because it was just, again, it was a selfish thing. I wanted to escape, and that's why I would drink consecutive days, because I didn't want it to end. I wanted to stay in that escape. Kind of similar to what you said about like some of the things you were missing out on in life. I was missing out on a lot. And letting that go was big for me, big for my family. And it's something that I'm very glad that I did, just because mine really wasn't from a place of identity. It was more so like a crutch to escape, because I didn't want to just face reality, face my own thoughts, face different things. And I had to, it was time to be the father I wanted to be the brother I wanted to be the husband I want to be, the man I want to be. I don't think I'll ever go back. And if you even notice, like if there was a hesitation there or something, it's not in a sense of that. When I say something, I'm thinking in the same regard as you. That's not for the sake of just saying I never will or for the streak. I had to even think when you were telling your story how long it's been for me. Yeah. It's a new way of living for me that I know is better for me. Because mine wasn't just on the weekend, it was during the week and stuff too. And I'm very thankful that I've been able to let that go. But I also want to say, and I know you agree, that I'm not judgmental at all of other people who still choose to drink, or even excessively. Like, I'd be a huge hypocrite because I probably was drinking substantially more even than they are. And I believe two things. I believe that if you're convicted of something, which I was, because it was altering the way I wanted to live life and to be the person God designed me to be, that I was leading to sin or acting in sin when I would lose control because of the extent that I would drink and act out of character, whether I got into fights or just acted not the way I wanted to present myself and love others. I could be an asshole. And so that I felt was wrong. But then the other side of that is, if I cause someone else to stumble, if I cause someone else to sin, if I cause someone else to have a problem or, regress in their walk, I did do that a lot because I was the person always amping everybody up. Like, we're not leaving until we finish this bottle, or we're not leaving. It's 2 a.m. They shut it down. We're going to go to the casino now until 4. Like, that was always me that drove it. And I realized I was having a negative impact in a lot of people's lives.
That's kind of what I was getting at, is not only was I not in scenarios that in the past I remembered it being large, it was me giving people drinks. Like, even something simple at my house, we're watching a sports game, which we still would have people over to games over this past year, and I'm not dishing out drinks for everybody, and I don't feel the need every time that my drink's almost empty to get up and while I'm finishing it, grab another and grab everyone else one. It's just, I was instigating it a lot. And that was a huge eye-opener. I was like, this whole time I thought that's what everyone else was doing. And so, which I thought was something that we've talked about in our group, is the pressures you put on yourself, because I thought that that's what everyone else wanted too, was to drink heavy or be loud and just keep drinking and for so long. But it's that outside pressure was completely coming from my own self, because when I took it away, and it wasn't like people were trying to be respectful of me being like, oh, Bryce isn't drinking. So like, it's because people still drink around me all the time, but it was never at the level of that it would happen when I was doing it, because I was the one facilitating it. And it was like, I felt like that's what everybody wanted, but it was just me amplifying the internal of me needing it to have fun. So I just assumed everyone else, that's what they wanted, to have fun, but that wasn't the reality of it either. So, but, and another point I forgot to say is something and not to say this about women in general, might come across this way, but our roles as husbands is to be patient, right? I mean, both sides, but a lot of times just women have a little bit more emotions and stuff than we do. And I found myself when I was drinking would be really the only time Amanda and I would go through periods where we'd have actual drawn out fights, would be because at night, on a Friday night or a Sunday, a Chiefs game or something, where I'd been drinking for 3 hours, my patience for something that I deemed dumb was gone. And so all week I'm telling everybody, hey, when you don't agree with or think it's dumb, the reason why your wife's upset about something, like, love her, have patience for her. And then mine would be non-existent in those scenarios. And so that was wild to see too, over the course of the year, the amount of, I genuinely thought for a long time that I was never the contributor to arguments, right? I was always, and I have actually coincidentally said this to me the other day, like, the way I respond to something, it's cause and effect, right? If you don't cause, then then I don't have to respond, right? But for a long time, I felt like I was never really the cause of arguments. But then when I stopped drinking, I'm like, well, even though maybe the minuscule thing that would cause the actual fight and argument was my lack of patience or understanding for her feelings or something, and that what would heighten that every single time would be when I was drunk, just because I'm like, oh, we're having fun, like, hey, that's dumb, or don't think that, or as when you're drunk, all your emotions get heightened. So if you something that would normally make me a little bit pissed, or something that I can normally breathe, be patient, whenever, in those moments I wouldn't. And so over the course of this past year, the amount of fights and drawn out stuff dramatically were gone, which was something that was very eye-opening, was why I will continue to not drink going forward, other than maybe occasionally. But that was a pretty eye-opening thing.
I think something that you and I are very similar about is that we have very little tolerance for hypocrisy. And because of that, when we recognize it in ourselves, we're able to make a switch, because if it were the tables were turned and it was, whether it's your spouse or someone else in your life that was being that same way and being hypocritical, it'd be very hard to be around or be with or to tolerate. And I had to do a lot of apologizing afterwards. And like, think of like, there were times even arguments that we'd be 30 minutes into an argument and I'm so messed up. I'm
Don't remember what you're arguing about.
No idea, but I wasn't going to lose.
Yeah.
So I still dug in and doubled down.
Yeah.
You know, but I seriously had no idea what we were even arguing about.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart that I'd be willing to raise the intensity with someone I love just for the sake of not losing and not being able to, in that moment, look at them and honestly, in a state of brokenness and vulnerability, be like, I don't even know what we're talking about. And I'm sorry. And that's what I should have done, but I wasn't able to.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to. And I wanted to be able to be that guy. I didn't want to be that hypocrite anymore. I felt like, and it's not for everybody. Like, if you are the person that can have 1-2 drinks, whatever, or even you can get drunk and have fun and not get out of hand and not make irresponsible decisions. And there was a phase of my life where I could do that, but it grew from there. That was very early on, and it progressed so quickly. And it was a combination of a lot of things for me. Addictive personality, liking to be the life of the party, the escapism of it for myself, of pain. And then I did like being known as the person that could outdrink everybody, as douchey as that sounds. But that was true. Like, I don't know why the hell I thought that was cool, but I did. I liked being that guy. I don't know.
I think, again, it's just you put this certain parameters of how other people want to view you, or do you think they should view you? But in reality, it's something you're just struggling in with yourself, right? And it's because all those things at the end of the day doesn't really matter to anybody else. And when you admit it to yourself, it doesn't matter to you either, really. You just are dealing.
Think about how stupid that is. You think at the end of the night, everybody else knew how many drinks I had? They were drinking too. They didn't even remember how many they had, nevertheless how many I had.
Yeah.
But I knew. Like, man, that's ridiculous. You know, you talked about your group a few times, and what you just described is how you lead. You know, it's by example. It's through vulnerability of being able to admit when you've been a hypocrite, and that's why you apologized. And what I love about what you're doing and what you've explained to me of what your group is, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's really about communing with Jesus. It's about coming together to seek God, seek closeness with God, and then allowing each other's stories, allowing each other's love for each other to help facilitate that process and walk together. And it's not necessarily about like you having some perfect lesson or plan that you've put together to like teach them that they need to hear and fix them or anything like that. It's more so you let it facilitate, you know, a discussion and a lesson that's out there, and then allow what's going on in your life to then create an environment that's safe and open for other people to do the same and learn from each other. Is that kind of what you do? Or
yeah, it started off. So we used the Craig Rochelle leadership podcast when we first started. He put out these templates that were easy to come in, have some discussion questions on it, and the leadership podcast still recommend it to people. I mean, the guests and stuff he has, there's stuff that you can really learn a lot of things from it, just from a leadership and personal aspect. But I think also part of that was the reason why we started with that is I wasn't really willing yet or ready yet, I guess would be the best word, because in my mind it was like, hey, it's a men's group, it's not a Bible study. It's like I used to say this when we first started, like, oh, yeah, there's some godly principles to it, but we're up talking about leadership, because it was one of those things I was still insecure about, like even that, right? Because I think without opening that,
I love that you can even admit that. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Even open up a can of worms of just kind of where our whole life that you've similar been in of our experience with Christianity. It's just I've always
hypocrisy of it again.
Yeah, so I just feel like, hey, if I would tell somebody, or it'd be a turn off to somebody, because if I admit to myself, it's a turn off to me. A lot of what I've been exposed to in Christianity aspects as a whole and not executed properly with the way God wants as a relationship with you, it's a turn off. So sometimes I felt like inviting people or even basing the group off of it could be a turn off. But we did that probably for like 6 or 7 months, and then it was like, this is great. We're seeing more guys come. We're seeing us talk about certain things in life that are worth talking about when it comes to the roles and stuff we have. But it didn't really turn until we actually started turning it into an actual Bible study, right? To where we started incorporating, we stopped watching the podcast. So instead of just coming there and watching a video together, we came in, we caught up we still catch up for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I'll take about 20, 30 minutes for Bible verses, a Bible study, and then I will try to relate it to something vulnerable in my life or where I'm falling short or where I can see it. But I don't ever do it as a speaking at anybody. It's always just, hey, this is how I view it. Mm-hmm. This is what the Bible says about it. How do we feel about this? And then we'll have just a great discussion amongst all of us. And it's been really cool to see. You've seen people who were atheists that now fully believe in God and are trying to raise their family in
What
God.
do you think was the turning point for an atheist in that scenario?
I think it was just seeing the simplicity of what a relationship with God is supposed to be. I think it's not some people, their exposure to Christianity is a set of rules and laws. And I mean, had an individual one, I think the perfect example is actually same individual or one of the individuals that wasn't really quite sure about God when they started and now love God and are basing their life around God was even simple. I don't know how to, I can't pray. I don't know how to pray. And there's a certain way I have to pray versus just, no, just start talking to God, right? There's no right or wrong way to pray. I would say, actually, there's some wrong ways to pray if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, but you get the point of what I'm saying. The simplicity of it, there's no right or wrong. It's, God, here I am.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you as God, your son, like, hey, and even just rambling, right, is still a prayer. Yeah. And I think the connotation of there's a right or wrong way just goes in the other side of what Christianity is for a lot of people who don't understand it is, it's a certain way of living life that's not fun or it's just completely opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Or they've experienced relational or childhood traumas of people that are supposed to love them as God would, represent their parents or, a parental figure. And then that traumatic experience shatters that trust, shatters that feeling of unconditional love. And then now they're supposed to believe that there's this invisible God that is going to love them unconditionally and love them the way they always wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
And I think that even some atheists, even if there's like a pull in their heart that they believe, they look around, they see his creations, they see, like becoming a parent, watching that process, like, that was a huge thing for my faith of just knowing God's real. But because of that brokenness inside, they're scared to get hurt again. They're scared to get let down. And so they have this wall up that it's easier to deny God than it is to embrace God. And then when they're in an environment that nurtures that and they actually receive love and God loves them through other people, then they're starting to feel that door open and they start to be more willing to accept that and let the power of God into their life and that transformation to begin. I've used the example before, but it's like a dog that has been in an abusive household or never was in a household, got dumped as a puppy or whatever, and has been in the wild or, was mistreated. Well, you find that dog on the side of the road and you bring it home. We've all seen where like a rescue dog is like super skittish. And even if you're like wanting to go show it love, sometimes it'll go run away or hide and cower. But enough time in that loving environment, enough time in that safe home, that dog starts to let go of those fears and it starts to heal and it starts to actually be able to be at a point where it can receive your love and not be so skittish. And that's us.
And I think, so you said the feeling of never getting hurt again, that's also breaking down the barriers or the box that people put God in, because God will never hurt you. And so it's like, how do we...
Yeah, because they assimilate the things that happen to them in life that are bad, that God's doing it to them instead of with them. We were just talking about
But a lot of times people are, the way we're taught, even regarding Christianity, puts God in a box that can set you up to be hurt, right? Where like praying for God to do a certain thing for you financially, and then when it doesn't happen, it's like, God hurt me. Or it's like, instead of just putting faith that, like, when Jet asks me for something right now and I don't give it to him, and it's because it's not what's good for him, right? Yeah. He's not old enough to really understand it. He might throw a small fit, but he's not hurt by it. He might get upset because he doesn't know how to process his emotions, but he's not hurt by it because 2 seconds later, I love you, Daddy, type of thing, right? Next, yeah. And it's like, similar to what you just said, me becoming a dad has made me been able to have that much stronger of faith in God, because I know how I feel towards my son, and I can see how my son should honestly is a model of how I should be towards God, because it's like, because
A childlike faith.
yeah, I mean, his innocence of we're not knowing where how he responds to me and all that stuff. It's like, how do I not give that same type of love and response to God when I'm actually intelligent enough or emotionally stable enough to actually properly do it? It's been interesting to see the dynamic of that, because a lot of times we just then set God up a certain way to be hurt, right? Or to feel disappointed in him. In reality, that should never be the case. Jet knows every single day I have his best interests at heart. He knows I'm there to protect him. That's why same thing as for his mom.
Trusts you.
Yeah, no matter what, right? There's no scenario when he's scared right now or needs an orange out of the pantry that he's going to go to anyone else but to ask for it, right? And he's not, doesn't get it every time, but it never changes, right? And so I'm still learning, watching every day, is like how that dynamic is. So it's like, how do I not fully live that out in my relationship with God? It's made me be a lot more in tune with a relationship with God, and a lot more faithful with God, but not in a way box God into certain expectations I have of him, but just fully trusting of him.
I genuinely don't know the answer to this, and I don't think I've ever asked you, and I'm sorry I haven't. But do you feel like there was ever a time in your life where you kind of walked away from God?
Not fully. I definitely.
What does that mean to you?
I mean, I never stopped believing in him, and never went a period of time of not at any point doing something for a relationship with God, whether that be praying, watching a church service,
Really?
something like. I never would go a long period of time, at least doing something, right? I might go 6 months without watching a church service.
Did it come from a place of like obligation and guilt to still watch a church service or something? Or
no, I just would randomly turn it on, or
Really?
Yeah. I've actually talked about this a little bit in our men's group. Is I've never doubted God or doubted there was a God. I think that's where, I mean, we've had many talks about our childhood, about the version of faith that or Christianity we were raised in that I don't agree with, but I do somehow, some way from that grasp the concept of God, which I'm thankful for. And I think that at least was achieved for what out of our childhood. Was like, I at no point have ever doubted that God was real. It's just I've just always innately believed in him, and again, not where I am now, where I actively pray. And
I think that's
that
because,
stuff,
without getting too deep into it, there were different versions of it that we were exposed to, and at very formidable ages for you. Some of the phases were actually good, and there was an anchor that was put in place there that I think kept you there. And I think even just the difference in our age and me being your older brother and catching some of the brunt of things, it is what made me walk away for a while. Because the God that had been portrayed to me was different than the God I was experiencing, and none of it made sense. And I did want to try. I tried to question if there actually even is a God, but I couldn't ever get past that point to fully to deny that there is a God. I look around and I see him. Especially living here in Arizona, you see the mountains, and the wind does that for me, and the animals, the intricacies, how everything is just like it's not chance, like the way our bodies work. Like I could never get there, but I did get to the point where didn't pray or watch sermons or want to talk about it. And the reason why I wanted to deny God was because at that same time I also was trying to self-empower myself to a point that I wouldn't need God. Because God was just a disappointment and letting me down because he wasn't doing or being who he had been portrayed to us to be. And so it was a long journey to find my way back, to find who he really is. And that it's not about health and wealth. It's not about performance. It's not about status. Sometimes it's not even about right and wrong. It's about love. And that I could be fully myself without having to put on any sort of mask, without having to perform to make sure I secured a position and that wouldn't be abandoned or overlooked or misunderstood, that no matter what version of myself I allowed him to, he always sees, but to like allow myself to be seen, he loved me. And like, that's what finally drew me. And I wanted to understand that, because I never could deny that he was there, but I just didn't understand how, like I wouldn't deny that he was there, but I couldn't really believe that he loved me.
Yeah.
Because I thought loving me looked a certain way. And it's only been through a very painful process over years and years of letting go of those things that were wired into us of who he is and what he is, and allowing the rewiring process to take place. And I'm so thankful I have, because that's the only way I can be free.
Yeah, what I tell a lot of people is the Bible itself and God and all the stories of Jesus especially, is the best all those books that you read out there, not like Tony Robbins books, right? How do I become more like disciplined and all these, I mean, you have all these gurus for everything. You can actually find all that same substance that you find in all those other books in the Bible, which has also been something that has been awesome for me to start using those as motivation and inspiration of how to be as a person. Right?
I'll actually give you a perfect example. I was watching something of Tony Robbins not that long ago, and I loved the majority of what he had to say, but he made one statement where he said, you can't be grateful and angry at the same time. You can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. That's not true. I can be grateful that I'm safe in this moment, but be scared for the next.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between, like, with the Bible. Yes, it talks about gratitude and the empowerment of having a perspective rooted in gratitude, but it comes full circle, because the reason why we're grateful and the reason why that we don't have to be fearful or we don't have to be angry is because of God, and being able to trust God, and not being able to just like trust in this like mindset or this coping mechanism that I can like go somewhere, that whenever something bad happens, that as long as it's like, think about how many times you hear somebody say like, well, I'm thankful because things could be worse. And that's true. And like, there is some power in that, to think like, okay, well, I'm not going to be depressed today. I'm happy today because I'm not paralyzed today. You know, like, it's always like comparing it to the worst to find power in the now.
Yeah.
And there is some validity and power to that, but it's still, at the end of the day, it doesn't come full circle. It's still, empty.
What I was going with that is, it's a lot of people view the Bible, those Bible stories as, hey, look what happened as a result of what they did wrong and what have you and so forth. An example that we've talked about quite a bit, I've talked about it with you, that it just never was portrayed to me this way, and I wish it would have. I think this makes it a lot more simple for people, is how much were we our whole life sex out of marriage, right? How much were like it's wrong, which it is, but it always was, don't do it because it's wrong, right? And when I'm using this as an example is, what the whole point of the reason why Jesus tells you, or God says, hey, don't have sex out of marriage, is because the concept, if it's a self-help type book, because think about it, if you get rid of what's right and wrong and the sin of it, right? If you have sex with somebody, right, and you're in a relationship with them where you started to have sex with them, this is the most simple side of it, how much harder is it to break up with that person, right? The soul ties of it, or the connection you get, right? Or when you have sex with somebody, you might get them pregnant, or you might have sex with somebody, you might get an STD or whatever. There's so many negative things that can happen or change the entire course of your life by just doing that one act out of the sanctity of marriage, right? And so we always were taught, don't have sex because it's a sin. And it's like, well, yes, it's a sin, but the reason why it is a sin is because God's trying to protect you from all the things that can come with it if you just didn't do it, right? And there's just so many versions of that in the Bible, of where people are always taught as a rule, like, just don't do it. Don't ask why, don't do it, it's just wrong, right? And then you're shunned for it versus being explained, like, and that's how I've now learned to read and study the Bible, is don't focus on the right and wrong, focus on the lesson that's supposed to be learned here of why you shouldn't do this versus just don't do it, right? And that's something that Amanda and I have talked about on how we're raising our kids as they get older, is really taking the time to explain to them why what they just did is wrong, right? Or why we're disappointed. We even try it now. Jet doesn't grasp it, but we're still trying and taking the time to lovingly explain to them, like, hey, this is why we don't want you to do this. And instead of being angry at them, try to help them, right? And that was a result of now being able to view God that way. God has a whole book in front of us that you can have thousands of examples that you can apply to your own life if you try and choose to see it through that lens. And that's what's really changed my life on how I've now viewed God. Because thankfully, I got to the point where I was interested in going that again, because it's versus our whole life it being just it's wrong. But that innate never giving up, like I said, he was always there. I always trusted in him and believed in him and always knew he was a phone call away, but it was not necessarily actively basing my life around him like I'm striving to do now. But at no point was I ever, thankfully, of others, is there even a God? I've always, thankfully, had underlying faith in him.
Mm-hmm. I know the answer to this question, but to pivot some, what do you feel, and to give a little context, Bryce owns a membership gym. I call him a big box gym. So he has a, 18,000 square foot facility?
Just under 22.
Okay. Just under 22,000 feet. And you've created a very special environment in your gym that's unique, and it's what I believe has made you successful, made your gym successful. And share with us what you believe that is and why you've done it that way.
Kind of going back to what we were just talking about is you reap what you sow, right? It's one of those things. You treat people a certain way, treat others with love, treat others with respect. You're going to see a favorable response more times than not, right? So building a community based around that aspect, especially in an industry that's not built on that, was a very attractive thing to do because you could, being straightforward, see the financial ramifications for it. People want to be around because they enjoy it. They're not going to cancel their membership, right? But they're also that much more likely to talk about it to their friends and stuff when it's a community versus just a place to work out. But it generally gives you purpose and joy to be there every day when you have a community built that way too, to really enjoy. Because, it wasn't always where it paid the bills. There was times where if it wasn't that type of environment, it really sucked to be there. If it was just a typical gym environment where everyone's kind of
just built on vanity.
Yeah,
right.
There for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Their own self-gain. Where it's cool. People at our business, either it's our team members or team members or our members, we all just kind of feel part of something versus it being a gym where, you don't see people really walking around, even guys really in tank tops there. It's everyone's wearing what you got on now or sweatshirts and baggy T-shirts. It's just it's just a different environment there, but it's something that it's inviting, hopefully, for everybody. You still have people that walk in there that are like, this is intimidating, this is scary, and it's them thinking
your gym compared to the ones that I've gone to before.
To kind of tie back into what we were already saying on the faith perspective of why would someone be so turned off? Just you don't know any better, right? Mm-hmm. It's just you always have heard the negative connotations, and they get in there, and that's why we also do and it's a sales tactic too. But we, instead of getting away the sales emphasis of it, we actually do it for this reason. Every member gets 2 personal training sessions with our personal training director. Does that lead to more timeshare pitch type sales? Sure, but we don't. Even if someone says, hey, I have an online personal trainer, it's like, hey, still come in, hang out with us. We're still going to show you the equipment, hang out with you the first 2 times so you feel more comfortable coming in. But you see those really having value for those people that come in scared, that after that they realize, well, the people that work here are normal, nice people. And then they also realize the environment very quickly is different than they anticipated. So then they're more likely to keep showing up. Also, I kind of already hit on it, but we build that environment because everyone's like, oh, the Planet Fitness model of you have all these people that are paying money and never showing up. Yeah, that's true, but they're not talking about your gym if they're not there, right? Mm-hmm. So people that come in intimidated or aren't quite sure about it, you want them to quickly feel part of that environment, because when they're part of something, like I said, then they're going to show up and then they're going to talk about it. Think how simple of it the next day you're at work and someone's talking to their coworker and they just reference their class they were in. Like, oh, class, you're in a fitness class? Oh, yeah, over at Element. Just something as simple as that as a result of having that type of community. So that's why we sought out to do it, because one, first and foremost, the industry is against that. I mean, it's not the connotations that kind of go along with all of it's not good. So.
Like when I think about a lot of the places that, whether it was somewhere I worked out for an extended period of time or different places around the country that I've gone and worked out in, your gym is probably the most friendly, non-intimidating environment out of all of them. And the way that looks from like an actual like brass tack standpoint. So if you're in the Kansas City area, go check out Element Fitness. It's his gym. But what that actually looks like, instead of being vague and just saying all these good things about it, is whether it's you or your partner Brock or anyone on your staff, you guys always make conversation with your members. Like, you're approachable, maybe even to the point where some people take advantage of it, which is the stories I love to hear. People giving you hell. But you know, you guys always, it's not just, hey, it's like, how are you doing? How's your kids? How's your family? Like, I remember it was a time I was there, and I probably heard you have 4 or 5 conversations with people about people in their families or something's going on with their work. Like, you guys actually take time to spend that time with them, to invest in their lives. So then you're creating that community aspect. You have a very high-end facility and equipment at a price that, especially now, is basically unheard of. Like, I remember even Lifetime Fitness back when I was at Lifetime Fitness 10 years ago was like $70 for me. And now it's like, what, 150 or something like that?
The one down the street from us, 190.
190.
Still has the same equipment from when they opened up.
And $190 now. Yeah. And when we first was there, it was $55.
Yeah.
And you're what? 39, 49?
$35.99.
$35.99. So there you go. So he's giving you his, from a business standpoint, outside of the relational and the community and the non-intimidating atmosphere. If you are also someone that doesn't really care anything about that, and you just want to go work out at a really nice gym with nice equipment, you're also providing a extremely upscale environment at a price point that's so much substantially more affordable and lower than all the other people that would provide a similar environment. So the person that can go in there that would normally be intimidated to go into somewhere like a Lifetime, or especially like a Gold's Gym or an LA Fitness, EOS here, or whatever, like some of the EOS here, like you're shoulder to shoulder and people are half naked, you know? And then like, it doesn't bother me because of like, if someone is in the mode where if they're shirtless or whatever and they're working out, and it's not about like comparing or with someone else or talking shit to someone else, and they're just like in their world and that's what they care about, like that stuff doesn't bother me because that's just the world that I'm in and I'm used to it. But to some people, even if someone didn't say a word to them and that kid takes his shirt off and is like posing in front of his camera for TikTok or whatever, that can be extremely intimidating. And you don't see that stuff in your gym, like at all. So that environment is unique. But then the fact that you have the amenities that you do, the equipment that you do, it's just, you've done a great job. And that's what's made you guys.
I appreciate you.
And you're also not, like, I know how many times you've set up tables of, you know, in front of grocery stores and been willing to do the type of marketing that a lot of people aren't willing to get out of their comfort zone and do. And it's also what's propelled you to be successful. You're just, what you see is what you get. Like, You're not putting on some kind of facade. Like, you're willing to say, I'm not Mr. I own this thing and I'm too important to talk to you, or I shouldn't be as approachable, or I shouldn't be sitting at that chair. Like, you've always gone the opposite route with it. Like, I'll be the first one to sit at that table, and then other people sit there with me. And then at some point, you know, my team's there and I don't have to be, but you lead by example. And I see that, and that's the second time I've said that in this podcast. So I'm seeing that's a congruent thing in your life, and I'm very proud of you for that. You lead by example in many different arenas.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's so Brock always, as you mentioned, my partner, he's always has this line when we're hiring people, but it sticks, is anybody can, in any business, but ours, anybody can build a nice fancy facility. It's the people that are in it that matter, exactly. Right? And it starts with us, and so it starts with us as a team, but then our team also looks to us too. So living by example is what essentially sets the tone for the entire environment of the gym. I mean, it's one of those things that we all are generally willing to help each other out no matter what it is. people always give me crap. They say, "Oh, knock on wood," when you say this. But the biggest thing I think is the testament of what we've tried to create and have created there is in 3.5 years now we've been open. Our locker rooms have where you bring your own locks from home. I would say maybe 20% of people actually bring their own locks from home. And so 80% of locks are our lockers are unlocked. And in 3.5 years, we haven't had one incident.
Wow.
Yeah, which just shows the testament of everybody in there is just genuinely happy to be there. And it's an environment that's contagious, right? And but it starts with, so we're at the top, right? So it starts with you. So like that's the model that I encourage people, like, hey, you want to see a difference in your family, it has to start with you, right? So you have to dictate kind of what the environment around you is going to be. It starts and ends with you. And if you consistently can be that, then you'll see a change over time. But if we weren't willing to go be in a Costco break room for a day,
exactly.
I mean, then how do you expect that environment to be contagious if it doesn't start anywhere, right? And if it starts somewhere else other than you, then keep your eye on that person because that person's going to make it somewhere. And so, but yeah, and I appreciate your point. I mean, it's something that we've worked really hard for, and there's a huge need everywhere. I mean, having worked in the gym industry in this area, it'd be a lot more expensive to get started a gym similar to we have there here. But I would argue the need is even bigger in this area for a gym like that, to where it's just not solely focused on how many people you have coming through the front door, as long as it's bigger than your back door, right? And having an environment that's genuinely inviting for people, to where, like I said, you can leave your locker unlocked, or you don't have to feel like you got to get all dressed up to go to the gym. You can. I mean, we have a very impressive people that actually work out at our gym. There's a guy the other day, you would have never guessed it, just seeing him walking around, and he's repping out 5 plates on back squat, and just, you never see him in a tank top, you never see him all nothing, and he's in insane shape. I didn't even realize he took his sweatshirt off finally because he was sweating his butt off, and he was just ripped up, and you never would have known because he never shows it, right? And it's like, that's the environment that, not that, again, like what you said, we're against it by any means. I mean, you do have it from time to time, but it's just
because like the extreme opposite of that I nerd out and love is like golden era bodybuilding, where all the guys are in there together, the girls, and your shirts are off, and you're pushing each other, you're building each other up. It's the exact definition of a community and everybody helping each other be better, but it was for a different reason.
Yeah, and I think it still has its place and always will, but I think it's just
not
interesting. You don't see everyone competing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm a competitive asshole, so I can see the value of that and the environment that creates, where you're constantly being competitive. But when it comes to that type of community, that there's a lot more people that are, and this is the monetary side of it, interested in being part of this community than that, right?
And where you're located too, because you actually made it, when you said that there could be a need for that here, my initial thought was, I don't know, but then I thought through it, and it might be that a chain of them here might not be successful.
No, just having a couple of them here.
Exactly. Because there is still people here that would want that type of environment that's different and refreshing from the typical. Because also as a demographic of the people here, like there's a lot more flash, there's a lot more pretentiousness, especially in the last like 3 years. It's gotten worse. It wasn't that bad here before, but honestly, I do believe we're pretty close with LA now. It's pretty right there, especially in this little center.
But the volume of people, you still have a huge demand where people want outside of that. I mean,
sure.
It's something that we get approached by strongman competitions and other things where they'll pay a good amount of money to use our turf area, and we always turn it down because it infringes on kind of the model
of everything else that you're doing.
And so and it just, people are always kind of blown away by that, but it's consistency of what the environment we're always trying to have in there, right? Even though you have way more people here that love that type of environment, you still have the people that just want to be a part of something, that want to come in. I mean, we have a lot of members that always just come up and even ask us if they can just work there a shift or two a week, because they just enjoy being there, and they've enjoyed the impressions that they get from our front desk team when they walk in. And we actually have 2 employees now that were members for a while that just solely were like, I loved always being greeted by the people that were here. So if I could do that to other people, I want to do it. We actually have them working with us now. So it's been a very unique thing to watch. But like you joked about it, there's the other side of it too, is where we do deal with a lot where people I think still view us, Brock and I talk about a lot, like there's an underlying sometimes resentment towards us because I think it's people just, it's rare where people build businesses or build environments.
Skeptical.
Yeah, they still associate us with, oh, there's no way you're in this, you're doing any of the hard work yourself, or you're in this all for the wrong reason, or you're just here to get as much money as possible. So we still get treated from time to time horribly because we're just kind of stuck with what the generalization of other people. But that's the real challenge, is when you continue to get treated that way, not letting it change you. And it's because you got to remember who you are, right? Or why you're doing what you're doing. It definitely makes for some entertaining like stories.
You're 30 years old, which is crazy to me. You being 30 is harder for me to accept than me being 34. But you got 2 kids, successful business, community, men's group, live a nice life. What advice would you give to anybody, man, woman, of any age, that are things that you think will help them be successful in life? And then what are the things, because I want it to pull the curtain back a little bit, because you hear that question a lot and then they give you this perfect answer. But as part of that question, what are the things that are still hard? What are things that you still struggle with, and what are you doing to overcome them as part of the answer, that, you know, what you would give them as a strategy to be successful?
I would say the advice would be have a family. Don't wait till the time is perfect, or they have a family, meaning like start your family. Don't put that off down the road, because that's, you start to learn some of the stuff we already talked about.
Yeah, but some people can't have a family.
So a lot of people think, hey, I'm going to wait till I'm 35, 40 years old to have
But what if
kids.
it's just never in the cards at all?
So if it's ever, well, let me finish what I was going to say. And the reason is, I think you waste a lot of time chasing the wrong things until you can see, like the stuff we talked about, the feeling of when you can see how the love within your family, and how that's also translated to a standpoint in my faith in my life, because it took me seeing part of that. I think there's a lot of principles also that go with it, to where your why changes. So that when your why changes, you see yourself making decisions that are actually good decisions, when it's a selfish or example, when we opened up this gym, the amount of stuff we got done knowing that I had a son coming in 6 months, because I think Manda was maybe 2 or 3 months pregnant, instead of just simply building a business, I was like, oh no, I have a son on the way I have to provide for. So when you start factoring in others, and a family helps with that, you can see that decision making builds and becomes kind of contagious in itself. I know it's weird advice, but most people view it the opposite. Like, oh, I have to get my life just perfect in order to start having kids. But again, that's the underlying having faith in God, right? God calls us to be fruitful, right? And what better fruit for us is than a family, right? And so, but if it's not God's plan, I know some people, like you said, can't have kids, or it's not in their cards in them. So the advice I would give in that is, ground yourself in your relationship with God, right? I mean, it's which a family is essentially the same thing as, and seek God in all you do, and start factoring in trusting Him through failure. So therefore, eliminate the fear of failing, right?
So you've said something, and I got 3 things already, and I'm not smart enough to get past these 3 and keep tracking them all without writing them down. So the first one, let's make it tangible and relatable to the person that, one, can't have a family, or even just doesn't want to have kids. They do have other goals or things, and that's fine. So I think what that would come down to, because what you really hit home on was, it made you realize where you were still selfish, and it made you act in a way that put others before yourself. So I think that the same thing that would check that box would be to put yourself in some sort of environment where you're serving others.
Yeah.
You're serving, by volunteering or something philanthropic, or even with the business that you're launching, that it meets a need that serves others. And whether the money comes with it or not, you're still passionate about doing it because it's something that's outside of yourself. The other thing that you just mentioned there at the end was about learning through your failures. Well, trusting God, and that He's got you, and that you have the freedom to make mistakes, and that you're not going to be any less loved or anything like that. But also being able to get to the point that the decisions you make, that you're not trying to make sure that every single thing you do is perfect and it's, what's paralysis by overanalysis. I think we've all done that before. And so it's allowing yourself to mess up, to fail, to learn from your mistakes. And then, see, I told you I wasn't smart enough to get past those 3. I'm already missing one of them. The other thing that you said right after about having a family, the timing of it. So I was that person that thought, I need to have a certain amount of money before I can have kids. And I think that comes from a place to be empathetic and sit in it with someone that's listening to this so they don't get defensive, is that, let's say they had an experience as a child where either there was extreme highs and extreme lows, or it was just all lows. They never had enough. They never had what other kids had. And so now, because of that, they want to be able to be at a place where they have enough money that when they have a child, that they can make sure their children have the things that they weren't able to have when they were a kid. I think that comes from a really good place. And I also acknowledge with what you're saying, it's never going to be the perfect time. There has to be an element of trust that comes with it, but there is an element of wisdom. Like really taking a hard look. If I am whether you're 19 or you're 38, but I've been in the clubs 4 nights a week and I haven't been working on myself and I'm not ready to be the father I know I can be, or the husband I need to be, or whatever. Am I ready to have a kid yet? Like it's there's still wisdom there, right?
Yeah,
and knowing that you're ready to be and let God change you. But that if that's happening while the kid's there, the kid is going to suffer some from that. And from a financial standpoint, there is wisdom there as well, of being at a point. It's not ever going to be the point where it's like everything's perfect. They never have to stress, and God willing, that is what you're able to achieve. But I completely agree with you, because that was me and I had to let go of that. I felt like I needed to have been at such an extent with my finances and businesses and everything that I could only have kids then. And it was through a lot of conversations like these, through people I respect and love, and people saying things like you did, that I was like, all right, okay, I'm just going to trust. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did. But you still implore wisdom.
The context I took your question was, if someone's genuinely at a point where they're able to accept advice or words of wisdom, whatever you want to call them, then you would hope that it'd be at a point where, like you said, they're not going out every night being like, all right, how do I become successful? It's like, well, if you can't see past that, then you're probably not willing to do something of that type of value. That's the context I was kind of taking it as. But the other point of it is why that answer is so impactful is you start, like I think I touched on it briefly, is you start realizing how much more fulfilling all that stuff is. I mean, the example I shared with you a couple months ago and it does help that like right now financially I'm not stressing over the next meal, right? So when this happened, that it's you understand what I'm talking about, but like when I had that real estate thing, right, where it was like I didn't feel anything, but when I look back and see my son having just pure joy, dancing to a song, just bobbing his head, the amount of joy and peace and gratefulness that I felt, it was just uncomparable. And the other side of it too, that I don't know if I've talked about this with you, I've talked about it a lot with Amanda, is just probably over the last year or so, as I've sought God more, and I think it's as a result of trying to be in tune to being a better husband and being a better dad. I don't really think I would seek God the same way I have lately if I didn't have my family. Could maybe, but I would say probably not.
Yeah.
But I was laying in bed one night praying, being like, I don't worship God very much. But this is the conversation I was trying to have with God. Like, I don't feel like again, parameters that are set on me. Like, I don't sing to you. I don't lift my hands all the time. And it was something that came to me as I was laying there. It was like the last 8 months to a year where I just can feel gratefulness. I can just feel peace. And I always pointed out to Amanda, I always pointed out in front of our family. And I, in those moments, still thank God. But it's like for the first time in my life, that's how I feel God, is the just appreciativeness and gratefulness of just my family. And in that feeling makes it easier for me to go to work the next day or make the tough phone call or have the tough conversation, is that innate feeling that just is there as a result that I don't think I would have if it was just me. I don't think I'd be lazy, not doing anything. I still think I would be striving and working hard, but I think certain decisions that I'd be making, I wouldn't be feeling those same type of things.
I think that's because in order for you to be, like you said, the husband you want to be and the father you want to be, you realize that you can't do it on your own and you need his help.
Correct.
And so therefore you need to rely on him more, and you're willing to admit that to be who you just described. But if you didn't have them relying on you, you didn't have to live up to being that person who you want to be for them, and it was just you don't feel like you need his help just being you.
Yeah, relying wholly on me.
It makes sense. And the reason why I also said I'm thankful that, I listened and was like, okay, I'm not going to wait until I've basically retired to have kids, is I also recognized that if finances are tight, if things are difficult in a relationship dynamic or different things happen, the hardships of life, the ebb and flow, we all have them. They're opportunities to walk and talk through those things with your kids. And if you do that in the proper way, in the healthy way, it builds a foundation in them that is going to serve them for the rest of their lives, that they don't assimilate life is good only if money's good. If you can teach them and show them that life can still be good even if money's not good, now they don't have a scarcity mindset. They're not afraid of that. No. Like, that's something we've had to overcome. Or, if everything's not perfect, if there's disappointments, that it doesn't shatter everything. Like, we can still have joy, we can still have peace, we can still have gratitude in our home. And if we model that and rely on God to model that in front of them and do it with them, they're ahead of where we were. And so that's what gave me the boldness to go ahead and say, okay, let's take this step, was because I recognized that it wasn't a scenario that I had to make sure everything was going to be perfect so that way they could have happiness or have a good life. It was, I don't have to worry about any of that, because if we do have to go through those hard things, it's actually going to be an opportunity for my kids to be farther ahead than I was.
Yeah.
And that's what gave me the ability to take that step. What are the things you struggle with?
I still factor in outside expectations and parameters. I mean, I try to convince myself that I don't, but I do. I think that's the struggle. The sooner you can clear that out, the more better off you're going to be. But it's always going to be a struggle. I find myself probably sometimes even overcompensating, saying so much that I don't care, that I waste time convincing myself that I don't care, because you do, right? And I think that is a huge prohibitor in a lot of people's success or reaching certain goals, is because they're either putting weight into the wrong areas, trying to make other people happy, or maybe in my case, spending time trying to convince themselves that they're not even that. But I would say that's the biggest place, would be that anyone could really, in my life, probably see that you maybe struggle with a little bit, is just trying to always be different than everybody, while probably factoring that in, the fact that it's carrying that other people know that I'm different in a way. So
makes sense.
But yeah, I would say that's probably, the other struggles I have right now are the relational dynamics that still exist in our life, right? Where I see that spread into other relationships, when I see letdowns. Like, there's other people in my life here recently that just disappeared, where it's like you quickly then try to overanalyze all those things, and then it almost changed how I was going to be, right? And so that's something I talked about too, is not letting people change who you are. Well, it's hard not to sometimes. I think that's just trying to get past relational hurts that you then let spill into your life, and then therefore decision making of it. So, but yeah, I'd probably say that's probably the biggest struggles that I have.
Yeah, I relate with that. I was blessed with an opportunity this past week. A mother of a young man that I work with asked me if I'd be willing to write a letter to him about what I see in him. And I didn't even have to think about saying yes or no. I just looked at it, absolutely. It'd be an honor, it'd be a privilege. And what I did is I wrote that letter to this young man from the perspective of the letter that I wish I would have received if I were him. And one of the things I wrote in there to him was, you'll never be what you do, but you always will be who you are. And I know I wrapped my identity so long in what I did and what I could accomplish, what I could obtain, what I could accumulate. And it wasn't enough to just be me.
Yeah.
Because I felt I was misunderstood, and I had to be able to prove that I was who I really know myself to be by doing all those other things for other people. And for the first time in my life in the last year or so, I'm finally at a place where I'm at peace with who I am, even if other people misunderstand me. It sucks. Like, I'm not pretending it doesn't suck, because that's callousness, that's hardness. If it doesn't, you don't still feel it, but I can still be okay with it, and I can still be me.
So the concept of humble yourself before God, that's the part that I think is where what that verse or phrase that's so popular means is true humility is not caring what anybody else thinks, not having to be right. Mm-hmm. And when you humble yourself before God, that means you're just saying, God, I fully embrace who you created me to be, right? Yeah. And having true humility is, I guess, the best way to sum up those couple examples I gave you. I convinced myself, I'm not cocky, I'm not overly proud, what people think the word.
But you're almost
means.
Proud in the sense of even what you're just saying, that I'm not those things.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
need
like,
to be. It's still a version of pride.
But having true humility where I don't have to be right all the time.
Exactly.
Have to control.
Yeah,
make sure people know that I'm right.
Accept my brokenness.
Yeah.
I don't have to cover it up anymore.
Correct. Yeah. I need everyone to know my side of the story, or I need everyone to know where I currently stand if it's a scenario that maybe they're involved in one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I have something, a lighter note, a way of ending things. But before I do, because it won't be serious anymore, is there anything else you want to talk about?
I've enjoyed doing this with you. I mean, it's something that you and I have these talks all the time, so it's not really too off from what this type of, we don't really dive into it necessarily this dedicated for an hour, how long it's been straight. But
yeah, we do.
Yeah, I mean,
every damn day.
Yeah, but I do appreciate the intentionality of doing this with you, because it is something that we get to do a lot with each other, fortunately, and I appreciate our relationship to where we can talk about these things. And
it's this, the way this has flowed. I just wanted to let it flow how it go and just let it do its thing. And this has ended up being pretty deep, and talking about God and the things that are most important in life. So I'm glad that we did this. But even our conversations, whether it's about sports or current events, all those kinds of things, that's something that I enjoy doing with you. So maybe there is a way that we can figure out how to make that happen more ongoing. But so on a lighter note, I ask everybody this question, so I'm gonna ask you the same question. If you could have a billboard, so this would be anywhere prime time you want to place it in Kansas, and it can say anything you want on it, but your name's signed at the bottom, so it's like something that, picture, statement, anything you want, but it's yours, like people know it's from you. What would you put on it? Make America great again.
Make America great again.
You're kidding me. For real? That's your answer. 100%. Legitimately.
That's it.
That's your answer.
That's it.
All right. Well, that's your answer.
There we go.
All right. That is what it is. Well, I have fun with this. We'll have to do more of this, and we're going to have to figure out a way to do it even when you're not in town. So I think we've gone for quite a while. But wrap this here. I just wanted to let this kind of just go wherever the conversation led, and I just enjoyed this with you. So I hope you guys found some value in this and enjoyed this conversation and got to get a little bit of understanding who my brother is. Very proud of him. Very thankful for him. So glad you guys are here. My wife was sending me videos of his son and my daughter playing, and it's just so amazing having them together. And then he's got a new little baby boy, and I got a little baby girl, and getting them together is like what you said earlier. There's just like the joy and stuff that comes from that. You can't beat that. What's the word? The gratification that comes from seeing your family flourish, seeing your family enjoy something, seeing your family enjoy each other. That gratification for me is higher there, greater there than anything else I've ever achieved professionally or anything like that. So I know you agree there, but we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching. And check out Bryce's gym if you're in Kansas. I'll put the link down in the description, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Buy XRP. This is not financial advice.
Yeah, everybody go, let's manipulate the market. Go buy XRP. It's not financial advice, but buy it.
Yeah.